Joining us today for bonus conversations on the coast is Samina Ali. She is the author of Madras on Rainy Days. It's a novel, and the paperback edition is just out, and that paperback edition is published by Picador. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you for having me.
The book has received a couple of interesting honors. It's Poets and Writers' First Fiction Notable Author, that's you, and you're also one of the top 5 debut novels of the year 2004. Now, in order to justify this rating, no, seriously, I just want you to read the first paragraph of the opening chapter, because it shows right away that we have an excellent writer. Go ahead.
The chapter is called Shedon, which means devil. My mother and I sat in the back seat of the Fiat, covered entirely with black chadors. Only our eyes showed, both brown, pear-shaped, and frightened. In her irises, I saw my own face reflected back at me, featureless, a dark oval mass, the ghost or the devil she already believed me to be. We were driving into the inner parts of the old city to visit the Alam. Ami was convinced the devil was inside me, and she wanted the mystic to exorcise it. But I knew that when she looked into my eyes, she saw the same thing, her own face, dark and formless. I
love it. I loved it when I first read it, and you read it better than I do.
Thank you.
Now, there was a review in something called the Far Eastern Economic Review that says, in part, her story, that's your story, is intriguing not for its surprises, but because she is one of a rare breed of writers who take us into the closed world behind a Muslim woman's veil. And that's exactly what the book does. And even those first couple of sentences kind of tips this off. And at this point, since it's a paperback, we shared a little bit of what it sounds like, and we quoted from one review, and we just gingerly go into some of the wonderful anecdotes of the things that happened to you when you were on the road. But in your case, a lot more happened than the usual. You talk in your notes that you stormed a mosque in Morgantown, West Virginia. Now, most authors on tour do not do that. I mean, you have to admit. And you've been touring for several months or weeks by that point, and women were coming up to you after your readings. They were holding your hand with both theirs and begging you to continue the fight. What fight are we talking about?
Well, I'll tell you what happened. After the book came out, I am actually the first Indian Muslim American writer. And the novel that that I wrote is about Muslim issues, and Muslim issues, of course, are really prominent today.
Yes, they are.
And the fight, as I feel, has to begin from within. If there's going to be any changes within Islam and within the Muslim community, that has got to start with Muslims themselves.
And do you feel particularly with Muslim women? Or is it, because you say it, one of the things that I think you're trying to do is to urge Muslim women to reclaim their power through Islam. And don't walk away from Islam. Stay there, as it were, and get your power back through Islam. And in a sense, you want to universalize Layla's experience. That's the way I read it. And
when I went to Morgantown, West Virginia to storm the mosque with a few other Muslim women, I did it because I really did feel it was taking the book to the streets. That's how I describe it.
Okay.
And as I was meeting a lot of Muslim women across the country, a lot of them did come up to me afterwards and thank me for speaking about the things that I'm speaking about, because it's taboo, because they don't have the strength to do it, because they will be excommunicated from families and communities. And so I began to think about how Muslim women don't identify with feminism because it's a white middle-class movement, and they don't identify with womanism because it's a black movement. So Muslim women have to, at some point, claim a feminism for themselves, and yet they're not. So I'm saying, let's do something about it. Let's start claiming Islam, and let's start claiming our womanhood. Let's not just start believing everything that Muslim clerics tell us who we are, and when they start to take away our rights, we allow that to happen. So we went to Morgantown because a woman was not allowed to pray in the main hall. And we wanted to say that she could. And so we stormed the mosque to show solidarity to all Muslim women and to show that they do have rights. If they want to pray in the main hall along with men, they have the right to do so.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at JimFosterCoc and email JimFosterCoc@gmail.com.
Joining us again this week for bonus conversations on the coast, Samina Ali, and she's here to talk a little more about her novel Madras on Rainy Days, which is now available in a paperback edition published by Picador. Now, as we ended last week's bonus conversations on the coast, we were storming the mosque in Morgantown, West Virginia, all of which seemed very strange to me. But it's a purposeful exercise, and it really ties in with the essence of your novel, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Because the novel is really about how Muslim women should begin to assert and reclaim their rights within Islam.
Okay. One of the other things that you said about your book is that it is entirely true, but it's not entirely factual. Now, that's an interesting thing to say because you admit, or if that's the word, that the main character is, based on your own life, and Samir is based on the man that you were forced to marry. And when you have all of that information, why do you say it's entirely true but not entirely factual?
Because the essence of the story is true. I did get married when I was 19 to a Muslim man in India, and it was an arranged marriage, and that man did turn out to be gay, and the marriage was never consummated. But unlike the novel, the Samir, for instance, in the novel is not my ex-husband in any way. Samir is actually a likable person.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
And I did not find out the way that Layla finds out in the novel. I actually was married to him for 2.5 years, and I brought him back to America with me.
Okay.
And, there are a lot of other differences, too, because even though I'm writing about me, I'm certainly not going to involve my parents and my brothers and this and that. And so the story itself is organic to what happened to me and the truth of it. But it's not journalism. It's not a memoir. It's not autobiography.
It still very much echoes your own life.
Very much.
And, you were brought up in a strict home environment, no phone calls, no freedoms at all is the way you put it. And as far as getting married, you say one place, well, it was just my turn. Everybody else was getting married.
Yeah.
And then all of this the strictures of the past become so much more formidable as you enter marriage. I don't know how you survived it.
Well, it was probably one of the most difficult experiences I've ever been through. And you have to understand that growing up in a very restrictive environment, in a very secluded, strict Muslim community and family, a woman grows up in that environment not believing that she has any rights. And it's one of the reasons I'm encouraging women to find out what their rights are, because it's only after Layla, the main character, discovers her rights that she's able to reclaim her life and do what she does at the end of the novel. But until then, she does sort of go on with her existence. She's controlled by her family, by societal pressures, by cultural pressures, by religious pressures, and these things force her to do what she ends up doing, which is, a negation of who she really is.
You say at one point that the reward of all this that you went through, and even the writing had some incredibly difficult moments. The reward is not in finishing and selling the book. The reward will come when I complete what I feel I must do now that I am still here. That is, to bring change to this community. There are so many sins that Muslims are committing in the name of Allah. There is so much strife and hatred and fear and misunderstanding between the Muslim and American worlds. I would like to try to bridge these two communities along lines of commonalities to reveal that, after all, we are human. That's a great mission.
Thank you. The book that I'm working on right now is a nonfiction book that begins on... the reason I began it is because on October 1st, my older brother had a little baby boy. And that same day in Pakistan, Sunnis walked into a Shia mosque with bombs inside of their briefcases and killed a bunch of Muslims while they were praying. That same day in Baghdad, Iraq, the American soldiers were celebrating the opening of a sewage system. And to celebrate it, they gave out candy, and a lot of children were there because schools were not open because of the occupation. 3 cars loaded down with bombs rammed into that crowd, killing basically all of those children. That day on October 1st, when my brother has a child, when I have a 5-year-old at home, I cannot look across the world and see how many children, Muslim children, are dying and not feel some responsibility.
So you and all of us have to find a way to bring love and compassion and forgiveness to this world, and imagine, as we might, how peaceful the world would be if we could bring those things to it.
I do hope so.
This is our second bonus Conversations on the Coast with Samina Ali, about a book that you should run out and buy at least 2 copies of, since it's in paperback, so you can share it with a friend. Madras on Rainy Days. It's a book you'll never forget.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at JimFosterCoc and email JimFosterCoc@gmail.com.